The creep who followed me on the London Underground was reading some post on here yesterday, which reminded me of something that happened to me when I was 15 years old. I was going to Camden Market by myself, and I've traveled alone a fair bit in London, so it wasn't a one-off occurrence. I knew where I was going, etc., and felt safe as usual. I think February it was. I had been waiting the day before, because I remember I was wearing a raincoat in case it rained again. A few stops after the tube left my station, my Let's Not Meet got on. It was obvious from the very start he wasn't right. Everyone was wearing coats or jackets of some sort, but he got onto the train wearing a vest, shorts, and flip-flops. So straight away I was thinking, what a weirdo. He gets on the train, starts looking around for a place to sit. I make an effort not to make eye contact, because he looks like the sort of person who would come and sit with you if you did meet eyes with him. He used to head down a fair way away at first, so I was relieved, but out of the corner of my eye I could still see him looking around constantly. A few stops later, he moved to a seat closer to me. I'm thinking, oh fuck, but tried to reassure myself it was nothing, and I was just being paranoid because my mom was always very wary of creeps and drilled it into us to be suspicious of everyone. Next stop, as people were getting on and off, he moved closer again. I could feel him watching me this time, which creeped me out, and he started tapping his flip-flop foot on the floor, which was quite unnerving. I made a point of going on my phone so that I wouldn't have to look at him, and thought about texting my mom, but I didn't want her to worry, and didn't want her to make me come home. A few stops before King's Cross, he moved to a seat opposite of me when it was empty. At this point, I knew something was really wrong, and it wasn't just a coincidence. He had moved this close to me. I made the mistake of looking up at him, and the fucker was staring right back at me, licking his lips. I started getting really panicked then, but I was getting off at King's Cross to change to the Northern Line, and was only a stop or two away, so I was thinking to myself, just hang on, you're getting off in a minute. Get to King's Cross, I get up to leave, and he stays sat down, thank God. I'm free of him. As I'm walking away from the platform, though, I turn around just to be sure, and lo and behold, there he is, walking a short distance behind me. Obviously, having got off, too. I started walking quickly at this point, all the time thinking it's King's Cross, everyone gets off here, it's nothing, you're just panicking. I was walking really quite briskly, and had to go down 2 escalators to get to the Northern Line platform to get to Camden. I kept looking behind me, and he was there the whole time, making eye contact with me. Instead of waiting and standing, going down the escalator, I kind of ran down the right side, hoping to be short of him, but when I turned back to check, he too was coming down the same side of the escalator, rather quickly all the time, still maintaining eye contact with me. I realized then that he definitely was following me and was really panicking. If you ever got the Northern Line from the King's Cross towards High Barnet to go to Camden Town, you'll know what I mean when I say there are lots of little entryways to the platform within the wall, like a lot of tube stations. I walked down the central bit in between the 2 platforms, weaved in and out of the walls that broke up the entryways to the platform, and then when I was sure he was on the platform, I waited behind one of the walls and made sure he got on a train. The whole time I was watching him to make sure he got on the next train that came. He was quickly looking around for me, and licking his lips still. I guess he assumed I was on that train, because he hadn't seen me leave the platform and got on to keep looking for me. I was so shaken up, I went straight back home. I realized on my way home that one of my earrings had fallen out. I remember being really annoyed, because I only brought them a week or so before. So, weirdo who followed and chased me at King's Cross Station, let's not meet. You scared the shit out of a 15-year-old me, and made me lose one of my new earrings. The Sewer with a Secret. I'm a 32-year-old male, so there won't any ambiguously creepy middle-aged men asking me for directions to a gas station or something like that. This story isn't much of a page-turner. I apologize in advance, because there's really not a whole lot to it. But the funny thing is that no one really believes me when I tell them, even my girlfriend of 8 years and my own family. However, in their defense, I do like to be funny quite a bit. I enjoy making people laugh, so maybe it's hard to take me seriously because of this abnormal discovery combined with my personality. That's the best armchair psychology I can muster anyways. I don't remember my exact age at the time I found it, maybe around 7 or 8 years old. I know I was young. But before I can drop the bomb, a quick backstory. My siblings and I don't have the most parental supervision growing up, but we certainly didn't have the least, so that allowed me to explore and roam free through the surrounding neighborhoods and parks more than some, of which I took full advantage. My parents divorced when I was no more than 4 years old, mainly because my dad was a severe alcoholic who couldn't get out of bed without having drink, which is in no way relevant to this story. My mother was left to raise us 3 kids on a legal secretary's salary, while my dad went to rehab, so my parents were going through their own struggles. I'm not knocking them at all. They did a fine job with what they had to work with as parents. But with my mom trying to juggle so many responsibilities at once, it understandably left the door open for me to explore. With that said, I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. During one rare snowless day, I was aimlessly exploring, which brought me to a park about a mile from my home, which is like a light year to a 7 or 8 year old. I think I was with someone else, some other kid drifter, but can't recall for sure. I remember this park had a distinctly large hill, great for sledding. It had a little shallow creek, which flowed into a sewer with a secret. The sewer's opening was like a small tunnel, just big enough for a young boy to walk into, which extended underground beneath the park into a straight line. The light carried a little ways into the sewer's opening, but it got dark quick, really quick, like murder quick. It wasn't uncommon to test my bravery by seeing how far into the dark sewer I could walk without shitting my pants in fear. I should mention that this was around the time after Jacob Wetterling disappeared, and his disappearance was the first time I ever heard of child abductions. He was around my age, so this especially added to the creepy vibe. I remember being freaked out and consciously worried about being kidnapped all the time, especially with all the media attention it received. Even though he lived nowhere near me in a rural area about 80 miles from the city, my young mind had no awareness of distance. It happened down the street for all I knew. During this particular game of bravery, I was slowly shuffling into the sewer, about 10 feet in, where the light was still illuminating the way. That's when I discovered there was another mini sewer tunnel on my left, on the wall, but much too small to travel through. That's when I saw something. I noticed an object just laying there in the entrance of the mini sewer, like it was put there as I approached. I remember thinking it was a fish or something like that, but oh, how wrong I was. As I got closer, I kept keenly inspecting it. I noticed it was fleshy with veins sticking out on one end. Fear slowly consumed me as the reality of what it was hit me. I was staring at a severed human penis. I saw the mushroom part, the lifeless, flaccid shaft, and the brutally frayed entrails that used to be attached to a body. I wish I could tell you that I ran to the police or that I ran home to tell my mom and she called the police, but I honestly don't remember. I do know that I never went back to check on it. I didn't tell anyone for years, and it wasn't intentional. It was just so surreal, I guess, that I must have just chalked it up to being part of our game of bravery that we played or something like that. And it was make-believe, or the wild imaginations of a child. Although I know it wasn't my imagination at all. To me, that severed penis is still a secret of that sewer, and will haunt it until the sewer is no more. But I know what I saw. That day, I know I saw a wiener in that sewer. I know this story isn't as creepy per se as many of the others I've read on here. I don't even know if it really belongs here, but I do know one thing. Whoever put that wiener there, in that spooky sewer, whether you or anyone else believes me or not, I would prefer not to meet. Drainage ditch chase. When I was 14 years old, it's been almost 10 years, we lived in a small neighborhood with a large field behind our house that stretched for several acres. To the right of our house, behind a couple streets of small houses, there was a water drainage ditch. It was concrete and about 6 feet deep, on a steep incline and about a mile long. One end of the ditch ran into a waterfall, in which water fell 5 feet down into a creek below. The other end of the drainage ditch held an opening into an underground tunnel. The tunnel was a little over 3 miles long and opened up near the highway. The opening has since been chained off, but as a kid, I often went down into the tunnel to mess around with friends and walk from one end to the other in pitch black darkness. One summer day, I was feeling bored in my house and tired of reruns on MTV, so I decided to go for a walk and head down to the tunnel. I called my friend to ask if she was interested in joining me, but she was busy doing something. I decided to go alone and started my walk to the tunnel end of the ditch. When I was 10 feet from the edge of the ditch, I could hear voices. As I stepped closer to the walls, I could see down into the ditch, and there was a Jeep Wrangler parked down by the tunnel entrance, and 4 guys in their 20s, if I had to guess. Not wanting to talk to anyone, I stayed at the edge of the ditch and watched them disappear into the tunnel before turning to walk down to the waterfall end. I've been sitting at the edge, watching the few small fish that lived in the creek swim around for almost an hour before I heard the sound of an engine being started. I figured the Jeep guys must be finished at the tunnel, and I got up to get a better view down the ditch. I guess my standing up at the other end caught their attention, because instead of driving up and out of the ditch, the Jeep turned and started heading towards me. I had a weird feeling about the car's change in direction and decided to go home, rather than walk back towards the tunnel end of the ditch that was near my house that would force me to pass them. Honestly, I turned into the field and started to walk across my backyard. Due to the length of the ditch and the direction it ran, the walk was around 1.5 miles. Less than 50 feet into my walk, I could see the Jeep come tearing down to the end of the ditch and then turn up towards the field. With a sinking feeling, I knew they were coming for me. I started to run as fast as I could. The field was uneven and hard to navigate at a quick pace. It was taking all of my concentration to run straight without falling, and when the Jeep swerved in front of me, I screamed. I could hear the guys laughing and jeering at me. Half a mile in, the Jeep had cut in front of me several times, but never stopped. They seemed to be purposefully driving in circles just to terrify me, so they could get a good laugh. I was getting tired as I got a couple hundred feet from my house, and I've never been as thankful to see my father as I'd been that day. He must have heard my scream and seen what was happening by chance on a smoke break, and had gone to retrieve his rifle. Standing on the porch, he yelled at me to get my ass into the house and pointed the gun at the Jeep. I could hear them slam on the brakes and come to an abrupt stop behind me. When I chanced to look behind me, I could see them speed off back towards the ditch, yelling about my dad being a psycho with a gun. By the time I got through the door, he had propped up the rifle in the corner of the living room and pulled me into a tight hug. From that day, I wasn't allowed to go back to the tunnel, and I lost the desire to see that place again. I'm not sure if their sole intent was to mess with my head and upset me for a laugh, or anything more sinister, but either way, creepy guys in the Jeep Wrangler. Let's not meet. Crazy dude on the London Underground. So last weekend, some mates and I headed to London on a stag do, Bucks party. We had had a couple beers on the way down, but they were by no means drunk. At around 2 p.m. we were on the London Underground when a guy gets on. He had scruffy jeans, top, and a baseball cap on, and was more worrying an industrial dust mask on as well. Soon after sitting down, he opens a sheet of newspaper and pulls out a Diet Coke bottle with a yellow liquid in it. He starts to discreetly spray the liquid onto the newspaper, and a smell starts to waft through the carriage. As soon as someone asks him what he is doing, he stands up and bolts the door as you're just coming into the next station. We immediately tell everyone to get off our carriage, and as we step off, we notice the next carriage down also piling off. The guy has gone back onto his carriage. As soon as we discover that he's got his back, they left on the other carriage. We immediately get off of the station and call the police, who arrived within 2 minutes. They asked us to wait in the area after giving statements, and 30 minutes later come to find us to say it was someone with mental health issues that said he wanted to clean his shoes. I can't help to think that this may have been a cover story though, so we didn't panic further, I guess.